Loyal to Law once again, and this time this is going to be a discussion or a talking video about a certain topic, and that topic would be one of the main mistakes that a lot of beginners, and sometimes you'll be able to see the mistakes that are also done by intermediate and advanced martial arts practitioners. And it's very common, and a lot of people don't really talk about this, and even if they do, it's very rare or very seldom being discussed in the dojo. And that would be the hitting levels. And what I mean by hitting levels is the type of levels where you need to recognize in hitting the different parts of the body of your assailant or your opponent, whether it be self-defense or sparring or sports competition like MMA or point sparring for karate or taekwondo, for example. Now, one of the main mistakes that I see that a lot of people, majority of people, sad to say, do is that they just attack this part, the head. They always constantly attack the head. And while it is good to always pursue and do a lot of techniques that aim the head, a lot of the people make the mistake that because you're just going to knock your opponent out by hitting him or her on the head, they'll eventually be knocked out because you're throwing a lot of techniques. And they're not actually being efficient and effective when it comes to attacking or putting down their assailant or opponent. They tend to forget this part, or even the legs. And the main reason being is, since it gives you the instant satisfaction, or it immediately lets you end the fight when you hit the opponent or the assailant's head, there's a tendency that you're going to be a head hunter. Now, in boxing language, if you're a head hunter, you're only going to aim for the head, obviously, and most of the punches that you're going to do will just go for the head. So you're not actually going to think about the body, and you're actually, in fact, shutting one aspect of what you've been taught down, that you need to hit the body boxing wise in order for your opponent's hands to drop. By having your opponent's hands dropping, letting him or her guard his or her body because they already took a lot of hits, then that's the time you're going to have an opening for the head, and then you're going to nail them with whatever punch you like so that they'll be knocked out, or at least let you win the entire boxing match. And it applies also to all of the martial arts. It doesn't matter what kind of martial arts style that you practice, you should never ever forget. And it also covers all of the levels of martial artists out there: beginners, intermediate and advanced, even masters. Sometimes I see they actually aim for the head oftentimes rather than the body, unless they of course are aware that they need to attack the body also, not just the head, in order to make it easier, more efficient and more effective for them to knock or at least hit your opponent or assailant's head down. And so you should never ever forget the body and the legs. Unlike a training dummy where it sometimes stands still, or a bob where it does resemble a human being but it just stays there, and you're actually just aiming for the body and the head and it doesn't move. When you're fighting an assailant or an opponent, you should always remember that even in training with a dummy, that you're actually going to use all the techniques that you've learned or practiced on a human being. And a human being is entirely different from a wooden dummy or a bob or any kind of dummy practice device that you're using, because a human being thinks, and it has also the fight or flight response. Not to mention that if your assailant is well trained, he or she can use really good footwork, might have a very good defense, guard-wise, parry-wise. They can also counter, they can read your moves, they can actually outmaneuver you, or they can actually outdo you in the field that you've specialized in, and there's a possibility that they can also be better than you. So you should actually not just focus on the head, but also look at the other parts of the body. I think of it this way. If the head is the ender of the fight, when you knock the head out, there's a reason why the head is smaller, and the brain is where our central nervous system is, or should I say the central system of the whole body. So you knock the brain out, hit the head in a certain way, knock out for the opponent, fight ends. However, it's not that easy to aim for the head. So you really need to look at the body parts first. And by looking at the body, you just don't look at the body as a big slab of meat or a big something like a huge punching bag target. You need to actually learn, research, and study some of the body parts that you may want to aim your attacks on. A simple hit on, say, this portion right here on my left side isn't necessarily going to be as painful as you hit me on my right side. Why? Because the organ here on my right side is the liver. And as you may know, if you're very familiar with boxing, or in boxing terms, that there's a certain kind of punch called a liver blow. And the reason why it's called a liver blow is because you're actually aiming to hit the liver. And by hitting the liver, one of the biggest organs of the human body, you're actually are trying to make your assailant crunch down in pain, so much so that they might have, or they might puke during the fight or during your sparring training. Hopefully you're not going to entirely destroy your liver during sparring, but for example in the boxing match or in a self-defense situation, you aim for the liver and your opponent automatically crunches down. And see, you haven't aimed for the head yet, you just aimed for this huge part on the right side of your opponent, which where you're going to see, if you're going to study or research about it, where the liver is. And the liver is big. It's much bigger than the head actually, if you're going to think about it. And even though the body is in a bladed position, if you're actually going to practice or train on maneuverability and footwork, stamina, agility, and everything else in between, and you aim for the liver, then definitely, even though your opponent has a guard with his or her right hand, being able to guard their right side of the body, then you know for certain that if you're going to fake for aiming for the head, for example, then you can actually aim for their liver. Another part of this whole body or torso that you may want to aim is the solar plexus. And we all know that, especially for beginners, if you're actually studying in a martial arts dojo by now, you already know that if you're going to hit a person on the solar plexus, you take the wind out of them. And if they can't breathe, then they're also going to crunch down. If they're crunched down, their guard is low. If their guard is low, and then you're free to knock them out if you want to. Or just leave them be because they can't breathe anyway, so they can't move. So it really paralyzes them. So fight ends right there. So aside from hitting the torso, you may also want to hit the legs. Now, by hitting the legs, you have to actually, depending on the person or the assailant that you're fighting or sparring against, now competition-wise or in the street self-defense, you may want to hit the legs repeatedly, or you may want to be really accurate when it comes to hitting the legs. It's not as easy as hitting the body, but it's not as hard as hitting the head either. Reason being is the legs are being used when it comes to movement. We know that. but we actually tend to forget that the legs are also used when it comes to maneuvering yourself and doing really good footwork. So it's kind of tricky to hit the legs. You may want to actually do some kind of tactics or strategies to aim for the body with a mixture of aiming the head. So you're going to mix the mid-range and the high range in order to make your opponent freeze in his or her position. Like, say for example, they want to maneuver, they move right here, like so. They use their footwork and they're aiming for the head. You make them duck or crouch, then you aim for the body, you make them block. Then that's the time you're going to be able to kick, because they're frozen in their position or in their blocking stance or turtle stance or fighting stance to protect themselves, and they can't actually block whatever attacks that you're going to aim for the legs in time. Now there are some exceptions, of course, that like some athletes who are really good in having fast reflexes, so they can actually see your attacks on high range, mid range, and low range on the legs. And so you have to actually be more creative and be more assertive in making them freeze in their position so that you'll be able to attack their legs. But the good thing that you take away from hitting their legs is that you stop their movement eventually. If you're actually hitting the legs repeatedly, or if you slam their legs so strong and so hard that they won't even be able to walk. And a very, very good example of a martial art that does that is Muay Thai. And that's the reason why you see a lot of Muay Thai kickboxers, or even those who are practicing Thailand arts, that they sometimes have this kind of guard or position where they're, if you, well, you can't see on the camera, but you may know what I'm talking about, where they raise their heel of their lead foot, and that most of their weight are resting on the back foot, which is their power leg, almost always. And they all only move their lead foot front and then move it back, front and then move it back. That's actually a good stance for them to easily block low kicks, so that they'll be able to stand longer and be more maneuverable and protect their legs, so that they'll be able to stay in their match or fight longer. So there you have it. It's not as much in this video, but it's a really good reminder for us all that you don't actually have to always aim for the head, especially for us who are actually training hitting the head all the time. And we need to refocus and see the entire body of our assailant or opponent, that everything is a target. It's not just the head. Although it's very enticing to hit the head in order to end the fight, you can actually hit the whole body and choose or pick whatever kind of target that you would want to hit in order to end the fight. So be more creative, be more assertive, and train more realistically in doing so. Not just aim for the head. It doesn't matter what kind of martial arts style you're practicing or discipline. You should actually also incorporate the body and the legs. So remember the ranges: high, mid, and low range. Never forget those. Whatever range is open, if they're guarding low, then you can hit high. If they're guarding high, then you need to hit low. And if you want to hit high, aim low so that they're going to drop their guard down, so that you'll be able to hit high. Mix up with the low, mid, and high ranges, and you'll be a more fearsome and more adaptive and more creative, crafty and scary for your assailant or opponent, martial artist or self-defense specialist out there. So that's it for this video. Just a reminder for every one of us about those ranges. Thank you so much, and hopefully that this video has helped you even in the smallest way possible. God bless you all. Always train safe and take care.